Back to school, the path forward. This is a News 10 NBC special report.
Good evening, I'm Brennan Summers.
And I'm Nikki Rudd. As we prepare for the start of a school year like no other, we know families are faced with plenty of anxiety and uncertainty. We're all worried about safety, childcare, and how our kids will learn in a unique setting.
That's why tonight in our next half hour, we're going to try to answer as many of your good questions as we can. Let's start right now with Lynette Adams, who takes a closer look at school policies and how all of this is even going to work.
Joining me is the head of the Monroe County Council of Superintendents, Kathleen Groutman. She is also the superintendent of the Greece Central School District. Welcome to you. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Let's talk about school coming up. Now, I know that the governor has talked about the importance of communicating with teachers and parents. What are you hearing from both of those groups?
We have been inundated with questions from our parents and from teachers. So there are a lot of questions specifically from our families, a lot around health and safety concerns that they have, around what exactly things are going to look like when they start school, when they send their students to school. What is transportation going to look like? What's it going to look like when they go get their lunch? What's going to happen in terms of their courses or their specials? So there's a lot of really specific questions that our families have that range from that health and safety domain right to the nitty-gritty and the day-to-day. And then our teachers are very similar. So our teachers, just like our families, have not been a part of all of this planning. So when we got the guidelines from the state, they weren't part of every little bit of it.
Right.
So they have the same kinds of questions.
It's the unknown, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about staffing. I'm sure that is a little bit of a concern for some superintendents. Are you worried about having, enough teachers, enough subs, bus drivers? Are people deciding not to come back to work? What's happening about right now?
That is one of our biggest concerns, I would say. And if you look at the different groups, if I take bus drivers as an example, we have almost 500 bus drivers in Greece, but the average age of our bus drivers is 60% above 60 years old, and many have pre-existing health conditions. So we've tried to get a sense of how many are planning to come back and how many may have concerns that would keep them from coming back. And that is a worry. That's the same thing for our substitutes. Our substitutes tend to be a group, many are retired teachers. So we're anticipating concerns around shortage in subs. We're anticipating that with busing. And then we're also working with our teachers to find out who exactly is planning to come back and who may have issues that where they would work with their doctors to be home.
So what's going on right now to make sure that you have enough staff?
We have to get numbers. So it's hard. I can't hire a sub until I know that the person's not coming back. So you can imagine the real-time nature of all of this when we didn't get the guidelines and weren't able to put in a plan until just last week. It's hard for people. They're just making decisions now. And so many of us, what we've tried to do is work with our different groups to have them let us know by a certain date. And so that what we can do is use that end of August time to make sure that we've filled positions.
Yes, this is going to be an interesting school year.
Yeah.
Let's talk about COVID testing. I know that that's a big area of uncertainty and the testing and the privacy issue. What happens if a child or a staff member tests positive? What happens after that point?
Yeah.
Have you worked all that out?
We're still working a lot of that out. So that is an area that people want answers. They want to know exactly what's going to happen. And the struggle with that is that we flow from public education to public health. So we're working really closely with the Department of Health here in Monroe County. They would be, in the case of a positive case, they would be the ones who would take over. But I'm going to tell you there's probably 10 more questions that people have around, well, what happens then? How are people contacted? Who is communicated with? When can a child come back? Is there documentation that's provided to the school? So there's endless questions that we're working on, but we're working and partnering really well with Monroe County Department of Health, and I have no doubt that we'll get that sorted out in terms of a really clear sort of communication and path. I'm thinking even by the end of the week we'll probably have some better answers for families.
Now, I know that kids have plenty of routine illnesses every year. In fact, you probably see a lot of kids many days of the week with runny noses. That's something that we often see with kids. Do you think, though, that parents should keep kids home for routine illnesses like the cold?
I do. So I'm going to say we're in a different time completely. And I remember listening to Dr. Mendoza early on about not students, but about how we adults oftentimes come to work ill. And he said, this was back in the spring, he said it's really important that we sort of break that habit and really watch our own symptoms and make sure that we're not coming into work, even if we don't think we have it. The idea of a runny nose or some other symptom, sore throat, cough, any of it, just making sure that we stay home. So we have plans in place, particularly for our staff, where we sign off, just like I did when I came in here, that allows people to sort of check themselves and then make that decision, hopefully to stay home. And then we're going to be doing the same thing with families in different ways too, where we're asking them to really check those symptoms first before they come to school, before they get on the bus.
Yeah. Sounds like it's going to take a lot of flexibility on everyone's part.
Absolutely.
All right, Kathleen Groutman, thank you so much for being here and answering some of these really important questions.
Thanks for having me.
Coming up, we're going to hear from teachers about their approach for the upcoming school year.
But first and next, I get answers to your most pressing health and safety concerns on this News 10 NBC Back to School special.